Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is the latest game released by renowned British studio Rocksteady, who gave the world the beloved Batman Arkham franchise, whose last entry, Batman Arkham Knight, was released back in 2015. Between the end of the Arkham franchise with Batman Arkham Knight and the 2024 release of Suicide Squad, there is an astounding lengthy 9-year gap, and yet there is no indication that Rocksteady has grown as a studio. Rather, the studio has regressed by making a similar but critical mistake that other companies in this business have made by forcing yet another broken and proven false business model on its audience. Suicide Squad is simply another failed live service multiplayer focused mediocre looter shooter that's been window dressed with characters from DC Comics. The fact that we have plenty of examples over the years of why this formula is nearly a guaranteed bomb that will kill a game within its first month after release to market, and still Rocksteady and its publisher WB Games chose to pursue this path, only points to a larger problem with Warner Brothers Discovery. But the real question is, who is to blame? Well, before I dive into that question, I want to show some numbers. Just as a side-by-side comparison, the Batman Arkham series, which is divided up into multiple games, collectively sold over 20 million units throughout the series' lifespan. Sales numbers for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, on the other hand, has been withheld internally, but the chief financial officer for Warner Brothers Discovery has gone on public record to state that the game has failed to meet expectations. Beyond that, Warner Brothers has admitted that the game has flopped and has cost the company a staggering $200 million loss. The game, which was released less than 6 months ago, has already been heavily discounted multiple times across several different storefronts, with the greatest discount for the game elevating to around 70% off. I myself have bought the game for less than $20. An unheard of feat for a game from a AAA studio that's been out on the market for less than 6 months. And the game now is being offered for free on Amazon Prime. To say that this was a simple flop is an understatement. This game is a colossal failure on the behalf of WB Games and Rocksteady Studios. As of right now, there's 2 games that Suicide Squad can be accurately compared to. 2 games that experienced a similar rapid fall from grace from the very moment they were released to market. The first of these 2 games are EA's Anthem, which was gravely criticized for many things, including a convoluted story, repetitive gameplay and mission structure, and boring mundane loot. EA had a sales target of 6 million units by the end of the game's first month on the market, with greater focus on microtransactions. When the game failed to meet that sales quota, it was soon abandoned by its developer, BioWare. And then we have the infamous Marvel's Avengers, a game I covered on this channel years ago before and a few weeks after its controversial release. Marvel's Avengers, unlike Anthem, was praised for its story but panned by critics and players alike for literally everything else, which includes some evasive technical issues, convoluted UI and menus, and a repetitive endgame full of limited copy-paste environments. Square Enix was criticized for forcing in pay-to-win business models into the game and rightfully ate a $63 million loss before publicly deeming the game as a commercial flop. Developer Crystal Dynamics, along with the Tomb Raider IP, was sold by Square Enix, and Marvel's Avengers was subsequently removed from all digital storefronts, including Steam. And these are just 2 of the many failed games that now fill the live service graveyard in the video game industry. Suicide Squad, by comparison, also ironically shares many of the same faults as its contemporaries, but dials the mediocrity up to 11. The game is filled with ridiculous convoluted menus, boring loot, most of which is useless, severe technical issues, and a mindless repetitive endgame that has failed to capture the attention of the mainstream casual gaming audience. Not only that, but to make matters worse, Rocksteady decided to connect this game to the Batman Arkham series through its story, which is among the most disrespectful uses of a popular license that I've ever seen. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a prime quintessential example of a modern gaming disaster. But before I point out who's ultimately to blame for this pathetic showcase from WB Games and Rocksteady, I want to dive deep into what went wrong here. Let's start with the story. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League begins with a simple premise. 4 characters, those being Harley Quinn, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot, are brought together by Amanda Waller, who has a task for them. Brainiac has invaded Earth and has corrupted the city of Metropolis, sending an entire army of alien invaders into the city to attack anything that moves. Somehow, Brainiac has corrupted the Justice League members, turning them against humanity, with the only member to be spared from this fate being Wonder Woman, who remains within her own mind throughout the story. Harley Quinn, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot form the Suicide Squad, whose main task is to hunt down, kill the members of the Justice League, and find a way to stop Brainiac's invasion of Metropolis. That's the setup of the game. The premise for this game is arguably the biggest problem with it, because the concept of it on its head doesn't make a lick of sense. Why would you design a game where the player can only take control of 4 minor DC characters, each of which, with the exception of one, could be perceived as being D-list characters, the most popular of which is a sidekick to the Joker, and have the player hunt down and murder the beloved characters that make DC Comics a global brand in the first place? The concept is so off the wall that it lines up with other games that have similar terrible concepts, one of them being The Last of Us Part 2 that ironically led to its own Civil War controversy within that particular fan base. After the conclusion of the Batman Arkham series, there's 2 types of games that were swimming around in the mainstream gaming community when it came to Rocksteady Studios. Players, by and large, wanted either a Superman game or a Justice League game. What we got here instead is neither, but a game that includes the Arkham versions of these characters. Now, before you play the story, an optimistic thought may pass through your mind. Maybe the subtitle Kill the Justice League is a facade, and maybe the Suicide Squad, which is largely depicted to be an anti-hero group in popular media, will actually find a way to save the Justice League, and then you get a grand team-up with the legendary members of the Justice League and the Suicide Squad at the end of the game to take down Brainiac. Now, that would have salvaged this game somewhat. However, that never happens. If Rocksteady properly managed this project, then that's what would have happened, because that's the best thing that you could do with a premise such as this. Instead, the game literally tells you exactly what you're going to do in the game from its title. There is no clever bait and switch. There are no satisfying MCU-style let's fucking go moments for the fans, because Rocksteady simply doesn't try. You literally hunt down and you literally murder each member of the Justice League who's been corrupted against their will by an alien menace because Amanda Waller told you to do so. Rocksteady is a studio that's more than well aware of how to implement fan service properly, yet they fail on even a basic level to deliver just that here. Despite the fact that you have many beloved DC characters in this game, the writing is simply so egregiously bad that you can do nothing but awe in the sheer mediocrity and total stupidity of the writers. The worst part of this story, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't even come from anything having to do with Brainiac or the Justice League. Rather, it's the moment when, after Wonder Woman forces the Suicide Squad into a storage container and throws it into the Daily Planet, Lois Lane chooses to free the Suicide Squad. You hear some dialogue with her, but then she immediately flees before the squad exits the container, so the character never visually appears on screen. This is how little Rocksteady cared about basic fan service. What's more, when you do arrive to those grand moments where the Justice League is slaughtered by these 4 idiots, you get these I spit on your grave moments where the Suicide Squad kicks a dead horse and insults the Justice League in ways that are extremely distasteful for any DC fan, such as the moment where Boomerang attempts to urinate on the Flash. Or the scene where King Shark cuts off Green Lantern's finger, steals his ring, and uses it like a pro despite having no prior experience with it, and destroys the shield to Brainiac's ship. Or the ridiculous retcon of Poison Ivy, who sacrificed herself to save Gotham City in Batman Arkham Knight, only to be resurrected as a fucking child with no memory of her past life in this game. How about that moment where the game has the audacity to introduce the multiverse and ties it into an alternate Earth Lex Luthor to help the moronic Suicide Squad, or the moment where Lex Luthor invents golden kryptonite so the Suicide Squad can stand a chance against Superman, an indestructible godlike figure, against some basic ballistic weaponry. The game is filled with some of the dumbest, most trite and banal writing I've seen from any video game I've ever played in my life. This includes the numerous bad and forced cringe-inducing attempts at humor, both in cutscene and in gameplay. The writing in this game is just terrible and extremely weak for any professional AAA project such as this, especially coming from a studio like Rocksteady. If the story wasn't bad enough, then there's the performance that further drags down the experience. On PC, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is an unoptimized mess. The game constantly drops frames regardless of what setting you implement. Even upscaling methods like DLSS can't make the game run efficiently. The experience isn't so bad that the game is unplayable, but there are too many moments where you're trying to simply move from point A to point B and the game just freezes for what feels like 10 to 15 seconds before it stabilizes itself and you regain control. Gotham Knights, another game I've covered on this channel, also had this very same issue. And even though Suicide Squad has never crashed on me like Gotham Knights did dozens of times in a single session, this kind of intermittent performance where the frame rate consistently drops is unacceptable for a AAA title. Since late 2020, every retro from that time till now has been recorded on PC. I've covered nearly 60 games in that time. There's only been 2 games on PC where I've experienced severe performance issues. The infamous The Last of Us PC port, which was eventually fixed, Gotham Knights, and this game just made number 3. Good job, Rocksteady. Then there's the actual gameplay that makes Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a complete bore to interact with. The core gameplay is a basic third-person shooter with an emphasis on traversal mechanics, each different for the 4 playable characters, not counting any of the post-launch characters. You have basic shields that can be replenished by shield tokens that burst out of enemies like an arcade game, along with ammunition and grenades that can each be replenished also through killing enemy units. What's more, this is an open-world game filled with numerous side missions and some minor collection-based activities. You're dropped in almost immediately from the start, and you unlock more mission types throughout the game, but the variety is rather limited. Most of what you're tasked with is killing waves upon waves of aliens while occasionally interacting with an objective marker on screen, which usually involves either destroying something or capturing something. In other words, there is no real variety to the mission structure, regardless of the activity you're engaged in. Each of the 4 members of the Suicide Squad can level up and increase the stats of their gear. You simply swap out old gear for new gear that gives you a boost in damage output. You break down and scrap old gear that's useless. As the characters gain experience and level up, you unlock abilities in 3 separate skill trees. The abilities aren't skill-based, as most of them only make it easier to gain combo multipliers faster. The characters don't rank up individually if you're not controlling them. Only the character you control directly will gain experience. This is a basic and quite frankly asinine design choice that even the most inept RPGs will avoid making. Regarding customization, you can augment your weapons with various damage buffs. You can apply elemental effects such as ice, thunder, and fire to both your ballistic weapons and your melee weapons alike with materials you gain throughout the game from Poison Ivy and Toyman. You can change your costume once you unlock cosmetic rewards through gaining ranks. However, the grind is made lengthy and time-consuming to the extreme on purpose because the game is a live service game with microtransaction packages thrown in for good measure. WB Games intended to make most of the profit from this game from players spending money on microtransactions. While this is a common industry business model that may have worked in certain games like Destiny, for example, here it's presented no different than any other game that has microtransactions included, and the rewards you get are simply not worth the hassle, whether you spend real money on these lazy and ugly cosmetic items, or you go through the rage-inducing process of wasting your time grinding to unlock them naturally. As an open-world game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League also fails as it suffers immensely from the lack of true NPC interaction, with 0 interesting side quests for the player to engage in. The Batman Arkham games were also criticized from the lack of NPCs as well, but the content that was there made up for the absence of them. Suicide Squad, by comparison, doesn't have anywhere near enough effort put in to justify the absence of NPCs, especially given how big Metropolis actually is. What's more, they threw in Riddler trophies and Riddler puzzles left by the Riddler for the Suicide Squad to collect and solve. Not only does this not make any fucking sense, because these characters are nowhere near as intelligent as Batman is, but considering that the Riddler is a Gotham City resident, it doesn't make any sense that the character would even be in Metropolis in the first place. Rocksteady simply took their well-worn-out open-world formula that's outdated and applied that same formula to this game, despite the fact that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a completely different game from the Batman Arkham series by comparison. There is no redeeming quality or factor here to the gameplay in this game. It all reeks of mediocrity and pure laziness on the behalf of Rocksteady, putting in their better judgment in the question. To make matters worse, the endgame, like many live service games, is designed on purpose to entice players to continue playing endlessly for as long as possible, all the while poking the bear to get players to pull out their credit card or their debit card and spend more money on this garbage. Part of the business model for this game is that the developers intended to spread the game out through a seasonal model, all the while introducing new playable characters in the process. Thus far, only 2 characters have been announced, with one having already been released. The first released character is an alternate multiverse version of the Joker, voiced by someone else who's not Mark Hamill. So, how is the Joker in comparison to the other playable characters, one may ask? Well, I don't know personally, because I haven't unlocked the Joker in this game, because there's only 2 ways to unlock the character. Either you have to gain rank, and when I say rank, I mean chapter rank, up to level 35, which takes forever, in order to unlock him naturally with one of the 4 original characters in the squad, or you can easily spend $10 to unlock him the quick way. Since I refuse to grind for hours upon hours on end through dozens upon dozens of play sessions, having already completed the short main story within 13 hours, and since I also refuse to spend more money on this piece of shit than what I already have, I suppose I'll never unlock the Joker in this game. The greater joke than the ridiculous unlock requirements for the Joker is that they added Freeze to the game as a second DLC character, but it's not the typical Mr. Freeze that we all know and love. Instead, it's a multiverse version of Freeze, where his wife became the villain instead of him. So the character, and I'm not shitting you, Miss Freeze, has been announced and hasn't been released just yet, as Season 2 for this game has been delayed. If this game couldn't shit the bed any more than it already has, the final insult and biggest slap in the face is the way Rocksteady treated Batman at the end. Batman traps the Suicide Squad in his cave and he fills it with Scarecrow's fear toxin, which makes no sense. As the Suicide Squad infected with fear toxin, you fight a giant demon Batman while hallucinating the entire battle. If that wasn't stupid enough, Rocksteady turns Batman into a complete clown, even making fun of his most famous quote from the animated series.
You've already lost, Luther. I am vengeance. I am...
Hey!
Ah!
Harley Quinn is shown to have super strength as she picks up a 200-pound, 6'2" grown-ass man in battle armor by herself over her shoulder, something that would have made sense for King Shark to be capable of doing, but not her. The fact that the Arkham version of Harley Quinn is described to be a small 5'7" woman with no upper arm strength like most females, standing at 140 pounds, and is able to fireman carry Batman up over her shoulder is ridiculous. And yet, another example of how Rocksteady has preferred in this game to treat their fans like idiots. Then there's the death scene for Batman, which leaked before the game was even released, and likely was the main culprit for why this game flopped out of the gate. Harley Quinn goes on a monologue and brags about how Bruce never thought that in the end it would be Harley that finishes his crime-fighting career. She then kills him in cold blood with a bullet to the head. And as you watch a pool of blood seeping from Batman's head wound, you soon realize that's the last of the Arkham version of Batman. This is the final sentence for a character that people have been following since 2009's Batman Arkham Asylum. As far as I perceive it, the only way to reverse the damage that Rocksteady has done to their own character as well as the rest of the Justice League is if this entire game is described to be a multiverse event that took place on a distant version of Earth somewhere in the universe. Except for one small detail. Kevin Conroy, the definitive version of Batman who has voiced the character since Batman the Animated Series in the 90s and reprised the role throughout the Batman Arkham series, died before this game was released. His final role and acting credit was this game. The "how dare you" reactions from the fan base speaks volumes as to the depths of how much people despise Rocksteady for releasing this catastrophe. Not only does Batman's death here betray those that are fans of the Arkham series, not only does it ruin the Arkham version of Batman as a character, not only does it place Harley Quinn on an insane pedestal that's unearned, but it also directly, more than anything else in this game, represents exactly why Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League fell to bargain bin prices within a mere 5 months after its initial release. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is yet another failed live service game that should have never saw the light of day. The entire project should have been cancelled from the jump. The fact that Rocksteady decided to greenlight this project is beyond any notion of common sense. The fact that this game was delayed for well over a year after its initial gameplay debut, where it was panned by general audiences on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet for its clear and blatant forced live service model, yet Warner Brothers, a company that scrapped Batgirl, an entire feature-length movie that was already filmed, edited, and ready for release, didn't bother to go ahead and cancel this game, which would have ultimately saved them millions of dollars, along with Rocksteady's reputation, makes no sense. This is especially given the fact that the Batgirl movie was canceled by the very same person that's ultimately responsible for this game existing in the first place. At the beginning of the video, I beckon the question of who is ultimately to blame for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the answer is in a clip that I'll provide from good old MSNBC.
Yeah, and let's go on to the sort of apologists for this. People who are sort of trying, Ruth, to make this sound like it's not that big of a deal. So Bloomberg is reporting that the CEO of Warner Brothers, David Zaslav, has said regarding the presidential election, asked about the upcoming presidential election, he said it mattered less to him which party wins, as long as the next president was friendly to business. We just need an opportunity for deregulation, he said, so companies can consolidate and do what we need to do better. So, of course, they want lots of deregulation, meaning they'd probably be fine with having Trump.
David Zaslav, the new head of Warner Brothers Discovery, became the CEO and president of Discovery Incorporated in 2006. In April of 2022, he oversaw the merger of Discovery and Warner Media into what's now known as Warner Brothers Discovery, as well as the renaming of HBO Max into simply Max. He's in charge of NBC Universal and has oversaw content distribution for multiple channels over the years, including A&E, the History Channel, the Biography Channel, National Geographic, USA Network, Sci-Fi Channel, NBC Olympics on cable, and many more. As showcased in the clip from MSNBC, Zaslav is clearly someone who cares only about money and has no interest in the actual hobby of gaming, which is required to make good content in the gaming business, in my humble view. This guy is the reason why Suicide Squad is a weak live service game with poor in-game content, because the game's only purpose was to extract as much money as possible out of the hands of its audience. This is also not the only recent DC Comics licensed game that's failed in recent years, with Gotham Knights being the other perpetrator. Mortal Kombat 1, another game I've covered on this channel, was also released to underwhelming results due to a similar microtransaction-laced business model being shoved down the throats of dedicated fans. Bottom line, until Warner Brothers Discovery gets their act together, gamers should be extremely cautious about supporting any other release from this company following this game. And that includes the upcoming single-player open-world Wonder Woman game from Monolith Studios. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, at the end of the day, will go down as the game that ruined Rocksteady's reputation and delivered another failure for the DC Comics brand.